Breeders' Crown Weekend is coming up at Harrah's Hoosier Park Friday and Saturday. There's 4 races on Friday, 8 races on Saturday. And I decided to do a little bit something different this time. And I asked Jay to pick out some favorites he thought was vulnerable. So we picked out 3 races, and Jay's going to go over them with me, and we're going to, discuss some Breeders' Crown races where maybe we can get a little value, Jay.
Well, I hope so. I think with 12 races and the uncertainty of what last week's eliminations showed us, I think there's reason to believe, and there's optimism for long shot players that some of these horses may be on the verge of being exposed.
Of course, you're going to be able to watch all these races live on DRF. We'll have free harness IPPs up there, as well as a 5% rebate via DRF bets for you to take advantage of. So plenty of good things there. We're going to dive into race number 12 on Friday, and that is the Breeders' Crown 2-year-old filly Pace. They're going for $700,000 here, and we have a heavy favorite, Jay, on the board, and I'm assuming that's the one you're going to try and beat here.
Well, I think there were a few things that happened last week to Geocentric that caused concern. Her race was not one of them, but how she appeared on the racetrack, scoring down, going back, she threw a shoe that may have caused a further injury. She looked a little bit ouchy, I would say, in the post parade. She looked a little ouchy in the post parade at the Red Mile one week, and when you're talking about very low odds, you want to find any reason you can to go elsewhere.
Well, why don't we take a look at her win from last week? And, she had a huge lead. I think Tim Tetrick driver kind of shut her down a little bit late. How did you think she was during the mile?
I think she was fine during the mile, but I don't think they went that much. And I think, as everything in elimination races, when nobody wants to park you, you can get things the way you want them to be. He is asking her for speed here. Obviously, she's coming home in 26 seconds flat, which is not an easy thing to do. But, my girl EJ is closing in a little bit late. So it's not as if she's a runaway train against horses that don't have capability here. I think there are a few in this race that have, if not ability, close to likability.
Is it worth noting that Geocentric's time of 151 was faster than the 3-year-olds went?
Listen, she's an exceptional horse. I recall earlier in the year, I spoke with Tim Tetrick about her, and he said it was, the first 2-year-old that's given him a thrill, going back to Captain Treacherous's 2-year-old years. So he was really open about that, and he hasn't been wrong as far as her racing is concerned. But, I have to go back to the Pennsylvania Star Stakes Championship, where she just held on to win that race, a race that my girl EJ put in an incredible effort that day. And again, go back to the fact that she doesn't seem 100% sound at this point in time, which may make her a little bit vulnerable. A lot, as we've said over the last month or so, great horses tend to overcome, minor obstacles. The question is it going to be a minor obstacle this week, or is it going to be, harder for Brian Brown to have her 100% for the final?
The other elimination winner was Pass Line. We're going to take a look at that effort here, and it was a pretty solid effort, and also a good effort from a horse I think you like here in Blue Pacific.
Well, I think Pass Line did, she made her move in the third quarter. It looked great on visually, but they really were walking the third quarter when she, went into a full sprint. And now, as you see, Yannick is working on her. And as you see, Dave Miller gets out late with Blue Pacific, and she's got enough pace. And, I'm thinking she's got enough talent as well. At least she's shown it in a very brief career.
So are you saying that you think she can overcome that outside post here? It's not easy to overcome post 9 at Hoosier Park.
A lot of things aren't easy. I think that the key element is do you have the talent to leave the gate, and who's going to stop you from leaving the gate on a straightaway? I think, one of the downsides obviously is if she happens to take too much air going through that first turn, 2 or 3 wide, that would be a problem. But Dave Miller, last year, he won the Breeders' Crown from the outside with Ammo in the 2-year-old colt division. He doesn't seem to be somebody, it reminds me a little bit of the old days of Ron Pierce, of a guy who's not intimidated by a bad draw and not unwilling to use his horse hard early if necessary, just to be in the right spot. And I kind of think that, that the outside might look bad on paper, but I don't think it's going to deter him from getting to the front or near the front. And as we saw last week, if she's close to the pace, she could be she could be a factor. And what we're looking for is, a horse to come up bad, not necessarily her to come up, anything better than she was last week, but hopefully the Geocentric will not be as good this week as she was last week.
Well, since I let Jay pick the races here, I didn't get to choose whether or not I thought it was a vulnerable favorite. And my picks are not looking at a vulnerable favorite here. I went with Geocentric on top. That's who I like in this race. Pass line. And then third, I went with my girl EJ, who almost beat Geocentric in the Pennsylvania Sire Stakes final. And that's the only race where anyone really got close to her. Whether or not I'm right or Jay's right, maybe he's right with Blue Pacific.
Well, I think we need to look, or at least people will want to watch to see what Geocentric looks on the racetrack when she hits the racetrack on Friday night. I mean, I think that's a key part. If she looks healthy, sound, scores down, sound, she's going to be a lot tougher to beat. But, like I said, it's a long year, a lot of races. Things happen to her before the race last week. And, you just don't know how they're going to return after a race like that.
We're going to move on to the Saturday card, and it's race number 12 on Saturday, the $400,000 open mare pace. And in this race, Grace Hill is the horse to beat as the 2-1 morning line favorite. And we're going to take a look at her, elimination effort here, or not so much elimination effort, here. It's Colby's Gigi who's on the lead and has an open lead, and is going to win. The horse way back there at the back of the pack is Grace Hill, Jay.
Yeah, Grace Hill just pulling the earplugs with an eighth of a mile to go. I'm sure that was very thrilling to those who had made a wager on, or at least the show, perhaps. But I'm a little concerned over this effort by Grace Hill, not because of that she didn't win the race last week, but why? Why go to the back? Why take to the back with a horse that probably if you go to the front, nobody's going to bother with you because, they kind of respect you and they also want to make the final. So I'm a little concerned that Grace Hill's effort last week, regardless of how bad it looked to some bettors, I'm wondering whether it was basically the team saying, I don't know if she's ready for this yet, or I don't know if we've got her as good as we need her to get her, because I kind of thought throwing in the towel was a questionable move last week if the horse is good. Maybe the horse just wasn't good. They knew she wasn't good, and they didn't want to expose her on the front end, maybe have her cut the pace and finish third or fourth. So racing her from behind doesn't expose her as much, to other people coming to the final where, she might have lost some respect if she tried to win last week and was not successful at it, might have entertained more people challenging her. Now you don't really know, but I'm concerned that Grace Hill is maybe not the same horse this week as she's been earlier this season.
Is there any thought to maybe the fact that she has dominated the division all year long and the post position really didn't matter, so a win was irrelevant?
I don't think it's ever irrelevant, to be honest with you. And it's you're playing with fire because you never really know what the rest of the horses are going to bounce up and do. I mean, you take a look at Max Contract's performance last week. I mean, she's a horse with immense talent, and as much as I think they've liked to race her from off the pace, I'm almost I'm certain that Max Contract is going to be either first or second most of the way in this race. I doubt Andy Miller's going to want to be playing games and looking to find himself a cover trip or an inside trip. I think he's going to want to be out there front and center. So, I think that whatever Grace Hill's team was trying to do, I don't know that they've bought themselves that kind of comfort here. And I do believe that there'll be a lot more aggressive drivers early. And if Grace Hill's back where she was, she's the best of these, but I'm not so sure that's the case. And that's probably why I want to go against her.
Well, why don't we take a look at Max Contract's win last week? Really good trip for this mare. Michaela did all the work in here, though, Jay.
Yes, and I think there were twofold reasons for Michaela, making a second move to get the lead and cutting the pace. I don't think Michaela has ever been a great horse on the front end. She has. I mean, she did beat Test of Faith on the front end, but this year she's really not been that kind of horse. I think that she needed the trip on the front end. She needed to get a little speed into her. I think that was probably the motivation, not necessarily winning, but but at least getting her acclimated, a race over the track, a race under her belt before the big race. And, I think 10-hole for her right behind Max Contract. I don't think George Brennan's going to let anybody in between those two go into the first quarter. And if that's the case, I think he may benefit from a very good trip here.
Well, once again, you'll see my picks come up on the screen, and I landed on the favorite again, Grace Hill. I really didn't dig quite as deep as you did here, and I felt like, that was just a mile where they were going to go around the track. They knew they were going to make the final, and I think you're going to see a much more aggressive effort here. I really liked the effort I saw from Grace Hill. I felt like when he pulled the plugs, the horse didn't really respond, but then topped her with the whip a couple of times, and she kind of kicked into another gear, from my opinion. I do like Michaela. I really think they put a race into her where I thought they were trying to tighten her up for this race this week. I think she will race from off the pace. And you went with Michaela on top as your beating the favorite choice.
I just think maybe her time has come. She's due for a big win. I don't think she's that far removed from Grace Hill. And I do believe that if Grace Hill's going to get the front here, I think she's going to have to work for it really hard. So that's my biggest concern for her, is that the other horses are inside of her. You have a Kobe's GG in the middle there that obviously is in very good form right now. So she's not going to just give up her position. So I think whatever Grace Hill invited from last week's effort, I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk for her. If she wins and she's the best, my hat's off. But I think she's going to have to earn it this time.
We're going to move on to the finale on the British Crown card on Saturday. That's race number 15. It's the $600,000 open pace. And the horse to beat here is Tattoo Artist. And we're going to take a look at his victory last week, where he kind of got a soft half of 55-4, 124-1, and cruised home.
The horse has just been in another league in the last 6 to 8 weeks for Dr. Ian Moore. I mean, just incredibly sharp, doing things this year that really we thought he was never capable of. I mean, he was not the kind of horse on a big track that can just go to the front and blow horses away, as he's done in the last few weeks, rather impressively last week for sure.
Yeah. The other elimination winner was By the Missile. We're going to take a look at his win, but also another horse in there that I thought raced really well, in Alleyweg Hanover, who doesn't typically like to be uncovered, and held his ground pretty well.
I thought you're absolutely right there about Alleyweg. Not his intended trip, not the kind of trip he's good at necessarily, but certainly good enough. I mean, my only concession there in Alleyweg is he's supposed to be better than those other horses in the race, just based on form and character, quality, and class over a period of time. So, I mean, I thought it was a good effort by him. I agree with you on that front. I'm just I think we're probably coming to the same horses for the final.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at this, the 2, 3, and 10 look like the horses to beat on paper, and the 3 is Tattoo Artist is probably going to be the favorite here. But is he really going to be that much more of a favorite than a horse like By the Missile?
I think you win enough races in a row, and you win them as impressively as this horse has done. I think that maybe our memory goes back a year or two when you think he'd be very suspect as a favorite. I think from a better standpoint, he's shown the wrinkles where he's off the pace winning, on the pace winning, fast races winning, slow races winning. So I mean, I think he'll be a heavy favorite. I'm hoping, what I'm hoping for with By the Missile in my selection here is that, Ronnie Burke's got him where he wants him to be. A few weeks ago when he was up against Tattoo Artist, Yannick kind of conceded the race, which is the most surprising thing I've ever seen Yannick do in a race, sitting third with a horse that looked like a contender and not pulling on the right line at the half-mile pole. But that said, I mean, maybe the horse wasn't right that day, wasn't up to his best effort that day, and they were just protecting him. I think there's no reason to protect him in this race. This is all or nothing here, and I really think By the Missile, from everything I've seen and heard, I mean, I think he has the ability, and I'm still hard pressed to give Tattoo Artist a rubber stamp as if he's this year's Bulldog Hanover. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what Dr. Ian Moore has done to him. I don't know how he's got him to be this good now. I ask myself the question: is it him this good and the others have slipped a little bit? You always have to wonder whether he's better or they're worse. But regardless of how they got there, he's been great the last 6 weeks of the year. And if he races up to that, on Saturday night, I mean, he's going to dominate.
Absolutely. If he continues that, there's no doubt about it. He's going to be tough. Though I would make the case that By the Missile, in the races that he has lost to him, was compromised. He had an outside post versus Tattoo Artist at Dayton. The start before that, he lost the Canadian Pacing Derby. I just think By the Missile went too fast in the lead, and Tattoo Artist gobbled him up there. So I think there's some excuses you can give to By the Missile, and that's why I went with him second over Tattoo Artist. And I took a shot with Alleyweg Hanover on a price angle, because I know he's just as fast as the other two horses if he gets the right trip. So if he's in the right spot, he can win.
Right? I agree with you there. The problem with the right spot for Alleyweg in this race, unfortunately, is not being able to dictate that by virtue of not being on the starting gate at the start. Starting behind Luz Pearlman, who, I don't know if Luz Pearlman's going to park entry mate By the Missile in the first turn, or if he's just going to let him go. And then, Alleyweg is going to be victimized by either you're going to come quickly and early and get the lead, or you're going to end up in a first over position, which, as you said, really not his game. So I like Alleyweg as far as talent wise, as far as the ability to go with these horses, as far as class wise. I just think it's a much tougher road for him with his style of racing from the 10 hole, where maybe some other horses who had a little bit more ability to race different ways might not be as compromised.
Well, that's a look at 3 races on Brutus Crown weekend of the 12 races, Friday and Saturday at Harrah's Hoosier Park, 6 o'clock post time both nights. We have free PPs, 5% rebate via DRF bets. Hopefully Jay and I will pick some winners. Well, we can't pick the same winners because we're not on the same horses, but hopefully there's some winners in those grouping of 3 races. Good luck.